This strange incident happened quite a while back, so I might not recall all the details vividly, but the memory of the eerie experience at a nearby subway station still lingers, casting a shadow over my interactions with friends and family. Back then, I was around 22 years old, just starting out with evening music lessons. I was in that phase of life where everything was a puzzle, and I was still adjusting to the bustling city life. On that particular day, my music lesson ran later than usual, so it was well past 11 p.m. when I reached the subway after grabbing a quick meal. The trains were running infrequently at that hour. As I nervously awaited the distant rumble signaling an approaching train, I scanned the platform. To my surprise, it was eerily deserted. While I had taken the subway during odd hours before, I had never seen it so desolate. The silence was palpable, broken only when I noticed someone lurking behind one of the columns near the edge of the platform. I tried to get a better look, but it seemed as though the figure was deliberately avoiding detection. Deciding to mind my own business, I focused straight ahead. However, the tranquility was short-lived. Suddenly, I heard a whistle seemingly emanating from all directions. It sent a shiver down my spine, and a sense of unease washed over me. Fortunately, the approaching train drowned out the unsettling sound, pulling into the station with a rush of noise. As I was about to board the train, I was taken aback by the appearance of a well-dressed man emerging from behind the column and walking towards the edge of the platform. While I felt relieved that he didn't seem like a thug or troublemaker, there was an unsettling aura about him, and he appeared somewhat frail. Seeing someone standing so close to the platform's edge always made me uneasy, even if they were a stranger. However, I figured he was probably just as eager to reach his destination as I was, especially considering the approaching midnight hour. He remained motionless, seemingly oblivious to my presence, until he slowly turned his head towards me. With an eerie grin and a piercing stare, he greeted me, sending a shiver down my spine. I tried to brush off his unsettling gaze, but then he let out a sinister laugh that sent chills down my spine, followed by something that still haunts me to this day. Without warning, he stepped directly into the path of the oncoming train. I reacted instinctively, rushing to try to save him, but it was too late. The horrifying sight left me in shock, struggling to comprehend what had just occurred. In a daze, I hurried to the nearest ticket booth to seek help, prompting the subway to shut down entirely. Subway staff conducted a thorough inspection of the tracks and the train, but to our bewilderment, there was no trace of a body or even a drop of blood. Once they finished inspecting the tunnels, their focus shifted to me, and the atmosphere grew tense. I pleaded with them to review the security camera footage to corroborate my story, but to no avail. When they scrutinized the recordings, there was no trace of the man, only me rushing towards the approaching train. They relayed the incident to my parents, sparking rapid rumors that quickly spread. As a devout Catholic, my mother's perception of me changed irreversibly, while my father tried to maintain a facade of strength. In the aftermath, the truth seemed inconsequential, and life took on a new normalcy, albeit tinged with uncertainty. The following year, I left home and settled into a rundown apartment downtown. Needless to say, navigating the city never felt quite the same afterward. Each night, I find myself staring at the ceiling, grappling with the reality of what transpired on that fateful day in the subway.
Hi, I'm Danny, and what I'm about to share with you is the most terrifying experience of my life. I'm a 22-year-old living and working in New York City. Since I don't own a car, the subway is my primary mode of transportation. It was a Saturday night, and I was heading home from a party in the dead of night. This was a routine for me, something I did almost every other weekend, so I felt perfectly comfortable taking the subway alone late at night. As I descended the steps into the underground, I was greeted by an eerie silence, with not a soul in sight. The atmosphere was always a bit unsettling, especially in this particular station, which felt tightly spaced. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched or followed, accompanied by the occasional echoing bang from some unknown location. Arriving early for the trains, I decided to sit on a bench and wait. Little did I know what was about to unfold felt like a scene straight out of a horror movie. "Over here, buddy," came a voice from the tracks inside the tunnel. I turned to see a filthy-looking man, perhaps in his early 40s, poking his head out and staring at me. His grin was haunting, with several teeth missing, giving me an unsettling feeling even from a distance. I tried my best to ignore him, but he wouldn't budge. The situation was becoming increasingly unnerving, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Inside the tunnel, I heard laughter. And then, another repulsive-looking man stuck his face out. This man, too, gave me a menacing grin before inviting me to join them in the tunnel. Their unwavering stare made me feel like I was being watched intensely, their eyes locked onto me. Despite their unsettling presence, I focused on waiting for the train. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed one of the men moving away into the tunnel, only to return moments later with another figure. I had to take a second look. There was now a third face, hunched over and lifeless. It appeared as though one of the men was holding up the other's face. As the sound of the approaching train filled the tunnel, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I stood up, preparing to board, but as I edged closer to the platform's edge, I was met with a sight that made my stomach churn. The two men were retreating into the tunnel, and the second man held something in his hand, something that resembled a decapitated head. I watched in horror as they vanished from sight, disappearing into the darkness of the tunnel. When the train arrived, I hurriedly boarded the first car, intending to alert the conductor as soon as we left the station. I couldn't bear to stay there a moment longer. As the train started moving, I caught sight of legs descending the stairs to the platform, but that was all. I didn't see who it was, but what I did see as the train entered the tunnels was chilling. I glimpsed a group of men huddled against the railing, mere inches from the train window, all staring directly at me. Frantically, I knocked on the conductor's door, screaming about the emergency. He opened up, and I quickly explained what I had just witnessed. He radioed someone in charge of the station, as well as a higher-up in the company, who I'm certain took action or contacted the appropriate authorities or security. It felt like an eternity for my stop to arrive, but when it did, I practically leaped off the train, overwhelmed with relief. Since then, I've attended another party at the same friend's house, but I made sure to avoid that station. I decided it was worth taking the extra long walk to the next stop. I'm not sure if strange occurrences are common in the subway at night. Prior to this incident, I had never experienced anything like it. However, after this terrifying encounter, I feel compelled to urge caution when in isolated places like subway stations late at night.
My father has been a manager at an MTA transit subway station for 35 years. With the demands of his job, there's a requirement for a manager on duty at all times. Consequently, he's experienced virtually every conceivable shift throughout his career, including his fair share of night shifts. During those quiet hours when most trains were deserted, he found solace in the tranquility of the empty carriages. However, amidst the amusing and peculiar tales from those late-night shifts, there's one that stands out for its sheer terror. One night, as my dad boarded a train to transfer to his office at another station, he found himself alone in the carriage at around 3 o'clock in the morning. At the next stop, a tall, slender man wearing a heavy jacket and a beanie entered the train. The man shot a brief glance at my dad before settling in the farthest corner. Feeling a sense of unease as the man kept glancing up at him, my dad's discomfort grew. When he reached his destination and disembarked, the man followed suit. My dad unlocked his office door and glanced back, only to find the man pacing nearby, just 50 feet away. Quickly retreating into his office, my dad locked the door and took a seat at his desk. Moments later, someone began attempting to turn the doorknob from the outside, followed by soft knocks. My dad cautiously called out, "Who is it?" and received a chilling response. In this retelling, we delve into the tense encounter my dad experienced during his night shift. When faced with the unwelcome visitor at his office door, my dad's instincts kicked in. Recognizing trouble, he sternly instructed the person to leave. He had a gut feeling it was the same individual from the train, especially considering the station's eerie emptiness during that time. Despite my dad's persistent request to leave, the person continued knocking for what felt like an eternity. Seeking confirmation, my dad checked the security camera footage, confirming his suspicions. It was indeed the same man from the train, donning the distinctive jacket and beanie. Interestingly, as soon as my dad brought up the camera feed, the man retreated, adding to the unsettling nature of the encounter. After ensuring the coast was clear, my dad resumed his duties in the office for a brief period before departing for the next train. However, his unease persisted, prompting him to check the camera once more before leaving. To his dismay, the peculiar man reappeared, descending the stairs to the platform and boarding the same train car as my dad. Throughout the journey, my dad attempted to ignore the man's unsettling gaze, briefly acknowledging him with a nod and smile in an effort to diffuse the tension. However, the man's persistent stare remained unnerving. Despite my dad's imposing stature, his peaceful demeanor and concern for potential danger prevented him from escalating the situation. Upon reaching the next station, my dad wasted no time in making his exit, feeling the weight of the man's presence trailing behind him. Constantly vigilant, he hurried back to the streets, acutely aware of the lingering threat lurking in the shadows. Indeed, the man from the train persisted in following my dad, casting a shadow of unease over his night shift ordeal. In this altered version, we delve deeper into the harrowing moments my dad faced as he sought refuge from his persistent pursuer. Forced to flee, he sought solace in the nearest open public building, which happened to be a Wendy's. Taking shelter inside, my dad nervously observed as the stranger approached, glaring at him through the window for what felt like an eternity. After a tense standoff, the man eventually retreated, leaving my dad to gather his thoughts over a meal before continuing his journey to the final station of his shift. The most chilling encounter occurred when my dad reached his third office. Amidst the paranoia of being followed, he checked the security cameras, only to spot the same man from the train lurking just outside, mere feet away from his office. Frozen with fear, my dad watched as the man gazed directly into the camera, his intentions unclear. After a tense moment, the stranger abruptly departed, disappearing into the night, leaving my dad shaken and uncertain of his assailant's motives. Reflecting on the ordeal, my dad couldn't shake the lingering fear of being followed. The stranger's erratic behavior and potential danger loomed large in his mind. Whether he was a troubled individual or harbored more sinister intentions, my dad couldn't say for certain. All he knew was that he had narrowly escaped a potentially dangerous encounter, leaving him to ponder the unsettling events of that fateful night.